Stumble out of bed and head to the game room, pour myself a bunch of Mountain Dew and yawn and stretch and try to make some NPCs. Jump in the shower and the blood starts pumping. Down in the basement the nerds start grumping about folks like me doing DMing from 9 to 5. It is disorganized play. What a way to run your Dungeons & Dragons game, barely getting by. It's all rolling and no critting. They just use your mind and they never give you pizza. It's enough to drive you out on the streets, yeah. Oh, I actually pulled that one together.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Hey everyone, welcome to Disorganized Play. I am your host, Dungeon Master, and apparently Dolly Parton filker. Yeah, that's called filking lyrics when you take a song and you just adjust the lyrics slightly to another. It's not a great term. It sounds weird. This is my co-host, our fearless leader and executive producer, Mr. Dom Zook, is also here with me. So every Tuesday we get together, we talk about prepping our Dungeons & Dragons game, which we run every Wednesday. You may have seen it last night or this morning on the VOD. It's Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. It's a Dungeons & Dragons 5e game. Every Thursday we get together and talk about what happened, what was the deal there. We'll do a little recap, and also we'll take your questions today, right? So if we run down our agenda, we're going to talk about the highlights. It's a long reach. The highlights of what happened last night, and each of our own personal opinions. We're going to talk specifically a little bit more about the Transformer Room encounter, which was sort of the centerpiece of last night's session. And then finally, we're going to do some open Q&A. If you have questions about your game situation, whether it's something as a player or something as a DM, or whatever, we are happy to discuss those things. So we're here with you for the next hour. Welcome everybody. Big ups to Farquaad for being our mod here in the show, and welcome Wraith42, Thomas W. Young, Black Dragon 8K, and the rest of our friendly faces and regulars who join us here week in and week out. Thank you so much. We got one more episode left in this adventure arc. We're going to wrap Expedition to the Barrier Peaks next week. Mm-hmm. So, with that in mind...
But that means that there's like 3 or 4 more episodes, right?
Thanks, BSB Care. Wait, are you being BSB Care now, or are you being Estel Castillo? It's hard to tell.
A combo.
It's a combo.
It's
a combo.
BSB Castillo.
BSB Castillo. Estel Care.
Sounds like a computer support.
Estel Care. Welcome. Hello, Citizen Thawne. Welcome. I am Estel Care. Maybe we'll get back to that whole thing of if you sponsor at a certain level, you'll get to name some NPCs or something.
Oh, okay.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. Whatever. It's a little bit Adventure Zone, right? Mm-hmm. So let's.
Thank you, Modern Child.
Filking. Felching is something totally else. Modern Child. Awesome. Thank you. I very much appreciate it. Yes. So. Let's talk about the highlights last night. And we talked a little bit before the show, but for you personally, what did you enjoy from the events that transpired this past eve?
I mean, I have to say the end was great.
Oh, really?
I like that reveal of things are okay. We managed to do everything. Okay, everything's set up. All right, let's start. Okay, bring in these people. Let's start healing stuff, and let's get out of here. And what? Oh, are the eyes?
It has so many eyes.
That was great. I liked the Monday Night Dungeon Fight-esque, ever-changing room. Mm-hmm. That was a fun little. To me, it felt like a callback. The Swedish gnome, the Swedish German
Swedish
gnome.
Gnomes. Yeah, the Eisengeister.
For translating.
I saw that. I went back and watched with the chat on, and I saw that Siamath was doing their the noble duty, maybe begrudgingly, not begrudgingly. They're very enthusiastic about it, but contributing to the cause by translating everything in near real time. So that was pretty great. Yeah, and very spot on. Although not the Armchair Michael Gold. Welcome. The triangle table.
Adam Michael Gold.
Oh, Adam Michael Gold. I'm
Or
sorry.
armchair.
I'm not. I like armchair Michael. Adam, push back from that triangle table and sit in an armchair and watch the show a little bit.
Welcome.
Yes, it is tips and tricks for DMing. We talk, first part of the show, we're going to talk about the game that we ran last night. And then later on here, we're going to talk, not much later on, I don't think, but probably knowing how much I like to ramble, 20, 25 minutes, we're going to talk about, kind of open up the floor if you have questions, you want advice about how to run your game, or if there's something that's in your game that you're like, I'm not sure why our DM's doing this, or I don't know what to do. Well, we have a player at the table who X, Y, or Z. It's ranges from game mechanics to psychology.
Yes. Yes.
The floor is open when at that point in the show. Yes. So I have to say, I enjoyed the Swedish chef. I thought that was a fun mechanism. It was like a fun moment in the show. We talked about this off camera, but I thought it was an interesting moment, So something that was unlocked by chat last night was they can communicate with these guys that they can't, that they don't share a language with, right? So they don't speak the weird kind of Swedish German that these guys speak, either in the game or at the table, right? So it's deliberately set up as this is a foreign language, and unless you find a way to solve it, they're going to keep speaking their foreign language. So it was set up by the chat last night. It was unlocked. There was a machine that you could communicate with them, and it would translate, but it only worked if you spoke in a Swedish chef accent, right? And I thought that was a fun little twist on the whole thing, right? When I put that into the chat unlock, I'm like, I'm going to make this like a low-hanging fruit thing because I really want this to get unlocked, and I really want them to be able to take advantage of this. And I thought it was going to be an opportunity for a real kind of like goofy role-playing moment where everybody gets to talk a little bit like this, whatever. And really, like, Eric glommed onto it, and then everybody else was like, Eric, why don't you ask them, hey, find out, hey, do they know? And I got to the point where Eric was like, you can ask them. Oh, I don't know. I
can't do that. That's too much.
Which, as we discussed this before the show, but I said, it's one of those situations where you think it's going to be a fun opportunity for everybody to participate, but you can't force everybody to participate, right? So if, Eric was the only one who wanted to get in on it, that's fine. Thomas W. Young, you point out, it was exactly like, it's like throwback to the Veggie seance thing where you had to put your hands in the mud and have the weird vines wrap around your hands so that you could communicate with them. It was the same thing, right? Yeah. So, that's, at the end of the day, they got the information that they needed. They really learned a lot. They made friends with the Eisengeister. They, secured their allyship and whatnot. So the information that was going to be delivered by that scene was delivered. Did they all have like a fun, goofy time doing like a dumb Swedish chef accent? No, but that's okay. That did open up the possibility that when Avril's character got drunk on the shots that they did, then all of a sudden they could communicate with her too. Like they understood what she said because she was slurring her words. Like, right. I thought that was a fun twist on the premise that had been stated. Like, you can't speak in your normal cadence or accent. They don't understand. The machine won't translate that. Right. That created the opportunity for a fun moment. So, I made the best of it that I could. And I enjoyed that role-playing scene. Like, I enjoyed both the German incomprehensible part of it, but I was also glad that we got to the point where they could just communicate directly, and yet it still had kind of a spin on it, that you're getting into, you're dealing with a foreign culture, foreign concepts, right? Yeah. And makes the players kind of role play a little bit. Now that's, the tricky part of that is, like I said, you can't force everyone to role play. You just have to accept that they're going to meet you on whatever level they're going to meet you on, right? So if I had set that up as like, no, everybody has to use this accent. Here, if you put on this hat, you can understand, and you have to use this accent in order to say anything or to understand anything. Then it becomes very railroady and very heavy-handed, and players will definitely rebel against that. But if you make it sort of this thing, well, as long as one of you indulges in it, you still get to go forward with the encounter, right? So that was an enjoyable moment for me, and I think it was going back and watching it again. I thought it was fun to watch, right? It created some great role-playing moments, even with because the fact that only one person was communicating with these guys. I thought it was a fun scene. It went longer than I expected, but everything goes longer than I expect, right? I enjoyed the Transformer room, I guess.
I liked. I'll be specific. I like the concept. I like the ever-changing nature of it because I was curious. On Tuesday we were talking about it, and I was thinking very MC Escher-ish. Kind of like things just changing and ever in flux. And so I think the mechanics that you put into play to sort of accommodate that were pretty good. And so I enjoyed that aspect of it. But
I thought about having little three-dimensional kind of standy flyy things so that they could actually float and fly around the room, right? Yeah. I don't know why they were hesitant. They're all improv and actors, improvisers, actors, or whatever. And a Swedish accent is not something that I think is generally offensive, right? If they all had to do something more stereotypical, like a weird Chinese accent or something like that, I could see where a player would be uncomfortable with that. But whatever,
basically,
it was what it was.
Do a Swedish chef impression, and then that was essentially what
that was it. Yeah. So I thought about doing a little to adjust the gravity, you start floating and things like that. I thought that would be kind of like a fizzy lifting gas kind of scenario. And I considered having a track where things could move up and down and whatnot. I liked the concept. I think if I were to run it in a casual game with friends as part of a campaign, maybe not for performance or not immediately that week. In hindsight, I would have added a few more kind of knobs and twizzles to it in terms of, okay, well, it feels like 5 months have passed even though you've only been there for 30 seconds or whatever. Therefore, you take 2 levels of exhaustion or whatever, or you gain another level of exhaustion, et cetera. I thought the exhaustion mechanic would be one way that we could definitely adjust some of the consequences for failing these saving throws. But I did like the fact that they were sort of making the rolls for at least 2 of the dimensions, right?
Yeah.
I was like, why should they sit there and watch me roll all of these dice to figure out what the gravity is like and what the time is like, and I'm going to take care of whether space moves around, but let's make them figure out, be responsible for that. And I thought that worked well, especially, they each roll 1 die for it and you combine the 2. So it was a standard sort of played by the apocalypse mechanic of if they rolled a 10 plus, then everything was normal. If they rolled a 7 to 9, then there was a slight disadvantage. If they rolled a 6 or lower, then they really had problems with those things,
cool.
right?
Yeah.
So that was, I liked that concept, and then I liked using the game night tiles to move this stuff around. We're going to talk about that more in depth here in a minute. We got one light that's just kind of can't decide whether it's going to be on or off.
It needs 4 hours to warm up, and then it's great during a show. But not here, not when we show up an hour before the show.
Yeah. Wraith 42, I think one of the things that in my mind what it was if you've ever seen those, there's a standard kind of trope of you get hit with a magical rod and you age 10 years, right? But you don't die of starvation or dehydration. You've just aged. It's you biologically aged that much. And I agree, that's sort of a weird, how does that make sense? But that's what I was going for more was you have your body has physically aged, not that that much time has passed, and now you're dead.
Yeah.
And I could have been more clear about that. I feel like that wasn't very clear. I feel like the consequences of, well, can I just eat something and feel better? I was like, yes. Yeah. Okay. Sure. I hadn't thought through that piece of it enough, and I would do that more. In hindsight, I would do that more. Yeah. We got to Ava's big moment from the Palace of Mirrors, where she sort of quenches the God's fire out of the reactor. I think probably I'm going to kind of pull Megan aside, or Messenger or whatever, and retcon this so that, like, she is essentially, maybe it isn't obvious to the other players or the table, but she's essentially been charged up with a bunch of energy from the reactor, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe it's not visible, but she basically absorbed a bunch of this God's fire into herself. So she's sort of a supercharged thing. Right. We're not going to talk a lot today about going into the finale, but I think that the final episode especially is your chance to break a bunch of game rules and make the characters overpowered, and then send just monstrous things after them and have them lay waste and throw handfuls of dice and destroy stuff, and really kind of play up the superhero epic nature of D&D, mm-hmm. even though they're 6th level. Give them temporary abilities that, heighten the stakes and then crash things through the wall, right?
So you can bring in one Tarask.
Yeah, that's right. No, it's, look, everybody's assuming that it's a beholder that has come on board the ship. No, it's a beholder mated with a Tarask. It's a Barask. Terra holder.
Displacer beast.
It's a displacer beast. I did do, where did I do this? I did an event at Gamehole Con, and I don't remember which event it was, but I did an event where I put a beholder head on a T-Rex body, and that was what came out in the final encounter. That's what came out after the players was a beholder mounted, or not mounted to, but grafted onto a T-Rex body. Maybe I'll have to dig that thing up and bring it back. It was pretty great. It would also be an amazing surprise, right?
Right.
I don't think we're going to. I will say, I don't think we're just going to have straight up Xanathar attacking, right? Outside the ship. Probably 3 years have passed or something like that. What's Xanathar been up to for the past 3 years?
Grafting his head on top.
Grafting his head onto a T-Rex in order to stay alive. Yeah, I love that idea. We really have the opportunity to amp things up, but we'll talk more about that on Tuesday. And then I did like the cliffhanger, and that was sort of. Oh, well, Black Dragon 8K, I've got something even better in store for you when it comes to puppets with button eyes. Stay tuned. I didn't bring it in, but I did find something. I was out shopping at TJ Maxx, and I went into the toy section. And I was like, oh wait, I'm using this in the game.
Oh boy.
yes, it's exciting times.
Is it a My Buddy?
No,
okay.
No. So and then I did like the cliffhanger. I had pre-scripted most of that. I knew, okay, well, we're gonna end at some point. I don't think we'll get to I don't think we'll get to the Xanathar showing up and directly confronting the players. So what would that play out like? And I did deliberately create this idea of okay, you've got it all together, things look like they're finally turning around, they're gonna send the parents down, and then there's an explosion, and boom, right? So, yeah, all right. Thank you, Black Dragon 8K, for the bits. Very nice.
And yeah, right, it's not a My Buddy, it's a kid sister.
I don't know.
Kid sister.
I will say, I don't know what Havana was hearing last night when I was saying Heilige Schwester, but she was like, you calling me a what? And I'm like, holy sister? And she's like, oh, okay, holy. I'm like, I'm not sure what you're hearing out of that, but it's just, holy sister, you're okay. So let's move on. Those are the highlights. I enjoyed last night's session. Obviously, I thought we were going to be able to do a little bit more in the bioengineering chamber, but they will get a chance to do some of that. Yeah, Wraith 42, it is an opportunity to introduce the idea that Xanathar is just a title and not a specific being, right? I think there's a lot potentially kind of to be done with Xanathar and what he's been up to. Like having 3 years or whatever you decide the timeline is outside, I think it gives you a lot of opportunities to do something interesting with that. It gives you the leeway to say, well, in the meantime, he's gained a retinue of mummy bodyguards, or or he has he has a guard who rides a T-Rex or something like that, right? Like all of those changes are plausible now because it's 3 years later.
He has a grumph that rides a dire crumpet that floats.
Yes.
What was going through your mind when Garav said, "I'm using the powder to summon Xanathar, essentially to open the portal back to Xanathar's place"?
That was interesting. I didn't have to have a lot go through my mind because Havana immediately jumped on. I'm like, we're not leaving my parents behind.
Right. Yeah.
It's funny that they remember that. Like, it's funny that, because I thought, here's what was going through my mind. He's like, I think we should use this. And he got out his potion bottle. Mm-hmm. And I was like, is he going to use the potion of true resurrection on himself or on the party? I was like, that's cool. That seems like a cool idea. But I wasn't sure, like, okay, I'm going to murder somebody and then we'll stuff their body through the reactor and somehow trigger this potion to pour in his... I didn't know I don't know where he was going, but when he first said, I get out this potion bottle that we got from Xanathar, I was like, oh, he's going to use the potion of true resurrection. And then he was like, the one that lets us teleport. And I was like, oh. And then Havana was like, no, we're not leaving. And I was like, oh... Okay, all right. Yeah. So yeah, I was concerned that was an escape hatch. Maybe it should still be an escape hatch. I don't know. I've sort of intimated that they are not connected to the prime material plane.
Yeah.
I also am not sure why he thinks that teleporting to Xanathar's stronghold is a safer gambit than staying in the ship, right? Mm-hmm. Also, this whole transformer room scenario was so clearly like, you're going to have to come up with a new solution, but there is a solution.
Yeah.
That it didn't seem like it would be really, really cruel to just create a death trap that did not have any. Like, where the solution was, well, it's too bad you died because you had that potion. You could have just created a teleportation circle anytime.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I try not to play multi-dimensional chess like that with the players. Yeah, and I've also told him, like, he's asked stuff like, can I still access my book and talk to my father? And I'm like, you can access the book and the prison, but it's not connected to the prime material plane, right? So it's stuck on whatever plane you're stuck on. So it's I don't know. Like maybe that is how they get out. That would in the next session. I think that's a great solution.
Especially if Xanathar is there, then they can just go back to his place with no one there.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, I still feel like if you're a crime lord and you're handing out, okay, here's a key to the back door.
Right.
The mudroom that they walk in is armed with spears and security cameras, right? Like, I don't think... I think you're likely walking into just as much of a prison there as anything else. It would be incredibly stupid of him to just, like, give them this potion, quote-unquote forget about it, not ask for it back, and then have the place just be like, oh yeah, well, because he's gone, nobody's monitoring the entryway or the access point that this teleportation portal goes to, right? Yeah, so as Wraith 42 points out, like, it leads to a trap. I'm almost certain if you're a good crime lord, it leads to a trap but it's like a delayed trap. So like within 10 rounds, the first 10 rounds, nothing happens, which gives you enough time for 2 guards to go, do you know this guy? Hey, somebody says this guy, da-da-da. What's your name? Who are you? Oh, okay, well, then we'll switch it off.
Yeah.
That's my take on it, just because he's such a powerful guy. If it was somebody else, like some random crazy wizard or something like that, fine. But yeah, that's what was going through my mind. It was like, oh shit, I forgot about that too.
Yeah.
maybe they do have more ways of getting off of this thing than I thought of. All right, so I do want to talk about what went into creating this encounter last night. So let's take a look. So for those of you who have not seen them before, these are game night tiles, right? Game night life tiles. Underneath here, you can see that it actually has a dry erase surface. And what I've done is I've cut these maps to the exact size of the tile and then just taped them on here, right? This is welcome to craft time with Tom. And so I printed these out in black and white and then colored them and then taped them on here. And these Game Night Life tiles, the nice thing about them is they have little rare earth magnets embedded in each edge, and you can just snap them together, right? And largely I wanted this to be a long corridor that they had to go down, right? With a couple of adjacent chambers. So I wanted to give the idea, and I think it came off last night, but I wanted to give the idea that, okay, well the wall, the barrier here has broken down, and so the reactor rooms have now become adjacent to this. Do I have a reactor on here? Not here. Who knows? Whatever. Let's find a proper tile, shall we? Here's a couple. So I wanted this to look like, okay, these reactors are, well, this is backwards, theoretically. These reactors are now, they're sort of infringing on the space with the power transformers and stuff, right? So that's what I was going for. I think, overall, like I had a lot of this kind of problem where the edges match up not quite right, and then they kind of bubble up a little bit. So I think I was more successful the other time when I cut them and I cut them down on the foam core and mounted them on the foam core than I was with this. But that's okay. It did what it needed to do for last night, right?
Right.
So that was fine. So let's talk a little bit about how I made these. So basically, I've used these battle map tiles before. You might want to find that link again for the Argos 3, right? So there is a massive space colony battle map that's really designed more for like Starfinder or whatever, right? And it's called the Argos 3. It's on Drive-Thru RPG, and it has these black and white versions of the map. It also has full color versions if you want to do, I don't know if it has a VTT, but it has full color versions. Yeah, the line is called Future Armada, and 0 Hour is the creator of these things. I really like these for the engineering part of the ship. They're okay for the rest of the parts of the ship. I kind of prefer the other battle maps for those, but I think these are really great. These are really great kind of set the scene type of things. The only thing that's tricky about them is they have a lot of narrow spaces, as you can see. Like in this particular tile, there's only this 5-foot catwalk that you can go down the middle of. And even in here, it's only 5 feet wide and 5 feet wide this way. And so getting them to necessarily like line up is a little bit tricky, right? Like you can tell that's not gonna line up, and that's not going to line up, but if you turn it this way, then they line up. So figuring out that geometry of it is a little tough. Now, previously when I've used these, I just cut them out this size and mounted them on foam core, kind of side by side by side, and then I had 5 different bands of it that I could deploy. It's actually in my trunk, I should have brought it in. And that worked out great. In this particular case, something that you'll notice with these Game Night Life tiles is they are square, right? Well, if we look at this, it doesn't work, right? There's a problem here in that if we set this at the corner, there's extra over the edge, and then it's too short this way. Like the map actually ends like here, right? So that's a problem. What I ended up doing was getting a little creative with Photoshop yesterday, and you can actually pull these images directly out of the PDF, right? So you pull them out half at a time, so it cuts the image is actually cut in half this way. And so this comes off as one image, and this comes off as one image. Then I'd paste it into Photoshop, and then what I would do is I would creatively cut and paste this so that one piece of this row was missing. You know, one thing that you can do is shrink this box from, instead of being a 3x3 down to a 2x2, this thing doesn't have to be this long, so you take the end caps and they slide down a little bit. And all of a sudden now this is 8 squares this way. The problem being is that this is only seven squares this way. So you have to trim 1 square off the edge that's 9 squares long, but you need to add a square to the edge that's only 7 squares long. And that's what ended up taking me a lot of time yesterday, was figuring out how to do that and how to get a grid, you know, to line up with it and whatnot, etc. So it was a pain in the butt, and then I had to print them at the right size so that they sized up appropriate to the tile. But then if you look, like it's just a couple pieces of tape that are keeping this on here. I didn't design this for like long-term heavy-duty use. I wanted 2 things, right? I wanted this to be modular, so it was its own tile, and then I also wanted to be able to snap them in and use the rare earth magnets. To me, that's the huge advantage of these things is that they do like snap into place, and then I can move the whole thing around without worrying about, oh, that's going to come apart or whatever, right? The magnets really, like, it's an ingenious product. I hope they can like actually deliver the rest of their KS and maybe get these manufactured, because I think a little more refining and whatnot, and they've got a really great, you know, accessory for your game on your hands here. But yeah, so I printed these things off. I decorated them next. Most of this is just like a wax crayon that I used, and it's not particularly tricky work here, right? Okay, I colored in one side of these round tanks one color, and I colored in the other side a different color. Well, that's about the fanciest thing I did. Everything else was just like, I think I'm gonna make this edge a little bit darker. Black crayon, you know, smudge it up a little bit. It doesn't need to look beautiful or perfect. It just needs to look like, oh, they're in a dirty old, you know, power warehouse, you know, power transformer facility, right?
Yeah, I mean, you compare with the original map, there you see how clean, almost blueprint-like that map is.
These are actually, I think, these might be...
Yeah, there you go.
These are the same tile, right? Let's get rid of some of this stuff. So yeah, if we look at these side by side, it just, honestly, I used 4 colors on this thing, right? I used gray, blue, I'm sorry, 5 colors. Gray, blue, black, and then I used 2 different kinds of brown, right? Not a lot of crayons, and it wasn't a lot of work to quick dress these things up, but that little bit of color, like this looks fine the way it is. It's got some gray areas that provide some nice contrast, but a little bit of color really makes it kind of pop a little bit and gives players like, oh, okay, can I go through there? Like gives them something to kind of chew on, provide some atmosphere. Is it a lot of work for kind of like a one-off, throw it away kind of thing? Yeah, but I'm also running Expedition of the Barrier Peaks in my home game, so I may reuse these. I may just keep these mounted on here and reuse these later in my own home campaign for some sort of similar scenario. Right. I think that'll be fun, right? It did provide a puzzle play type of experience of like, okay, well, we're gonna go down here and we're gonna try and, you know, manage your position on the board. It felt, you know, everybody was said it's like Monday Night Dungeon Fight. I thought it was a little bit more like a board game of like, what's our goal, and then how do we manage where we're going to be and what squares we deactivate in order to stay on top of things.
Right.
I did embellish some of these with a little bit of magic marker, of just Sharpie. So like this is a little bit of Sharpie, but that's it. You know, and then there's a little bit of Sharpie there. It's no big deal. This looks great. It's not that hard to do. It's literally just like make a wobbly line. Okay. This was put a bunch of dots from A to B. All right. And I don't know if this is even like one of my better tiles, but there it is, you know. Do a streak down one side, zoop, zoop, zoop. Do a streak down the other side, zoop, zoop, zoop. Like, I think it is very evocative in terms of, it looks like how I imagine kind of something out of the Matrix would be, right? Like just all these dirty arcing power cells and whatnot, without requiring a lot of artistic skill, right? Like, this was work. I'm not going to deny that I didn't spend a lot of time doing this. But in terms of the level of artistic talent and my ability to draw, not that important. Not anything that you could not learn in a week, really, to be honest, in terms of creating something like this, right? If you're going to freehand draw all this stuff, that's a totally different thing, right? But think of all the times that we're asked to freehand draw a map and you kind of muddle your way through it, when you could, if you find the right materials, alter your own maps to give you like a great experience, right?
Right.
So yeah, it was work, but in terms of could I teach somebody to do this, or could you watch this video and go, oh, I'm going to go home and do that with just foam core or whatever? Yes, absolutely. I think you could. You really could do it, and it provides a great experience for your players. I like that one because I added red to it. I was like, I'm getting tired of this color scheme, so I put a. It's not on there. Here, let's get rid of this.
I was just going to compare the two. Yeah.
So you can see that they have there, but see if you can get them to overlap. Now they lay flat, right? That's pretty good. It's when you add another layer on there. That's right. So, so there you go. That's what I did. It was time consuming because I wanted to have. First of all, I wanted to make sure that I had a variety of tiles, and I wanted to make sure that there was that. I wanted to make sure that it just didn't seem like the same thing over and over and over again, right? So I knew that I wanted this particular piece to be sort of the centerpiece. Like, that's what I envisioned the main corridor looking like. But I wanted to be some variety in that so that it wasn't just like 5 tiles that go around, right? That was a decision I made. So then I had to Photoshop these things up, right? So I spent a lot of time Photoshopping and hacking those files. In terms of mounting and coloring them, it wasn't terrible. I'd say it was 2 hours, right? I probably spent more time Photoshopping. This was probably 2 hours, and then that was it. It was done, right? Now, I did spend a lot of my prep time on making a prop instead of thinking about, okay, so do they eat a level of exhaustion when this happens? Like, how long is this encounter probably going to go, given what the responses are? Right? I could have put a little more game mechanics prep time into it, but the advantage to pushing those things to the back burner and focusing on this thing is I can improvise game mechanics in a satisfying way. Did it run off perfectly like the way I really wanted it to in hindsight? No, not necessarily. Right. But I did get to put this on the table and I was very happy. This is something I can't improvise in the moment, right? So it's something I like to have in my arsenal. Like, it's worth dedicating the time to it. So there you go. You could do it yourself. I encourage you to try, and I encourage you to, if you're going to run this adventure, pick up those Argos 3. So there's 2 things. Pick up the John Pintar maps. Those are amazing.
Right.
Absolutely recommend those for this module. No question about it. I believe it's called something like More Realistic Maps of the Expedition of the Barriers. It's on DM's Guild because it's a Wizards, IP. So there's that, and also get this Armada, future Armada Argos 3 map. I like this because I think this makes better battle maps than the stuff in John Pintar's. John Pintar's stuff is so detailed that you could, cut and paste a section and put it on here, but you realize just how big that ship is once you get hold of that PDF and go, okay, wait a minute, how big is this JPEG?
Right.
8,000 pixels wide? What in the holy God is happening? So that's a quick look. I don't know how quick, 10, 15 minutes. That's a quick look at how I put that prop together last night. Yeah. It transports really nicely. I liked the plug and play aspect. I enjoyed the piece of the puzzle that was like, okay, your options for leaving this room are disappearing. It added some time pressure, and I think it raised the stakes and increased dramatic tension just by doing that, by demonstrating to the players like, okay, well, you're going to be out of places to go besides the reactors here shortly. Now, it turns out that was the solution, right? But also, if you were paying attention, that was going to be the solution because it was foretold in the prophecy, right? Yeah. So that's, I thought it was a different style of encounter. And that's what I was looking to showcase, right? Like, I love the idea of, well, time and space and gravity are really unstable here, but describing it in theater of the mind is not as satisfying to me as literally taking pieces of the battle map and shifting them and moving them around and changing, like the players actually seeing the physical space move around them.
Right.
If I wanted to be more of a dick, I would have had it when they were split on different tiles. I would have had that space start to move around, but that just extends the encounter even further and it gets more chaotic, right? I didn't want to do that to them, but I did want them to realize, like, oh, we're trapped in this weird dimensional vortex kind of thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, in a home game, you probably would have had more opportunities to play with it a bit, but because of time constraints and keeping people here past midnight or whatever.
Yeah, I didn't want to do that, right? I'm trying to keep things wrapped up at 11 o'clock. Yeah. And I think also, in a home game, I might have considered, like, having either a chrono elemental on the loose in the complex, so that it was a combination of, it's not just people marching around the battlefield, but also fending off, the time gremlins or whatever it is who are coming after you, who are trying to, or even just like the weird little, it'd be great to put something like vampire bats in the thing, right? Where they're not a big nuisance, but you gotta kill those 3 bats, or otherwise there's gonna be 5 bats next round, and then there's gonna be 7 bats next round, and then there's gonna be 11 bats next round, or whatever it is. So, I think if I wanted that to be like that whole session, like we're going to face this climactic kind of obstacle, I think there's ways to kind of filly fancy around with it a little bit. But I was happy with how simple it was, and yet it was complex enough at the same time that they're like, whoa, I don't know, let's invoke Basharla and find out how we're supposed to get out of this thing. I was glad that they did. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a little open Q&A time here for the next 15, 20 minutes or so. So if you at home have a question, I guess you can ask a question about the Iron Keep, our game here if you want. Well, what I'm thinking with the Vampire Bats encounter specifically is one of those deals where that every round 2 bats spawn in, right? Next round, 2 more bats spawn in. So if you don't kill those 2 bats, the next round there's going to be, if you only kill one of them, next round there's going to be 3 bats. If you don't kill all 3 of those bats, the next round there'll be 5 or 4 bats or whatever. Your problems start to get worse and worse and worse if you can't keep up with it. So that was my thinking behind if I were to add kind of like a trickle down, not a trickle down encounter, but just sort of like, the dripping tap that eventually floods the sea.
Something that's increasingly going to get more and more a problem.
Yeah.
It's a nuisance at first.
Rather than adding them kind of as breeding pairs exponentially, and then there's 2 more, and there's 2 more, and there's 2 more, even if you just added them arithmetically instead of logarithmically, it still creates a problem.
It's too early in the afternoon for those words.
It's too early we were up too late is really what it comes down to, Dom. So yeah, if you have questions about the game or about your game or about Game, welcome to the Merry Mercenaries.
Hey, Merry Mercenaries.
Griffin of H. I don't have a link for these battle mats, and it's called Game Night Life.
Oh, yeah.
You can Google it if you want to. That's the place. I will tell you right now, they're really backed up on delivering these things. I had ordered the very... all right, Griffin, got it. I had ordered the very basic set of these. I got 11 tiles. That was it. It was like the most basic Kickstarter pledge that they had available, and it's in the most basic format. Like, I looked at potentially one of the things that they offered with these was, instead of doing a square shape, they have a hexagonal version, right? So you can fit them together in a hex format. And I love stuff that's hex shaped, but I decided, you know what? I've gotten enough like strange messages from them between the time the Kickstarter wrapped and the time that the backer kit finally got locked down, that I was like, I'm making sure that my backer kit order is just the most basic order possible. I'm in it for $30, and if it never happens, well, I tried, but it's only $30, right? Now, I'm lucky in that I got these, I don't know, like what we had them on the show a month ago, 2 months ago?
Something like that,
Yeah. Dom, what's your side of the story?
Well, I was a dum-dum, and I ordered both square and hex.
Yeah.
But not the gray hex, I think, or not any gray. I think I ordered
just the basic color.
Basic color, because I wanted.
They had multiple formats, and they had multiple colors, and they had multiple grid patterns.
Yeah. And I was like, well,
that was their first Kickstarter.
I was like, the hexes would be super awesome, as you said, and if I keep them just this basic color, then I can match them to like a battle mat or something like that, and make them. I can extend them essentially. So I ordered that. I don't know. I don't know.
I honestly like they send weekly updates of how their shipping is going, and right now, yes, those are the ones.
GNL. Yeah.
And I wouldn't look at their Kickstarter page because I'm sure the comments are on fire.
Yeah.
They're having a real problem delivering.
I'm honestly, I'm not angry, but it's just it's kind of like this stuff. Kind of, I would have hoped would have been worked out a little bit faster and sooner. To their credit, they are trying to make this the best product, and they're going through a lot of issues trying to get it to that point, keep the costs down, and make it a good product. And I appreciate that. However, it's just taken a long time. Then the thing is that because I ordered hex mats with my square mats, I can't get either.
Right. They're only shipping your order once it's complete, right? So if you have anything that's not a square, tile, you're waiting for everything else, all the square tile orders to get out, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, right. I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. But but I am looking forward to once we get them. But at this point, they're not even on that page yet. They're still sending out squares. And they're just moving up in terms of how the larger the order, the more that's what's going down. So Tom got an order of 10, right?
11. I got one bonus one, so I got 11. I got 11 tiles here.
So they went with the basic smallest orders first, get those out as fast as they could, and then now they're moving back up.
I hate to say it, but I think you could probably make something like this with foam core and some rare earth magnets without it being too tricky.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I think Roll for Initiative or someone came out with similar
something
ones
similar,
with also magnets on them.
Yeah,
like super fast.
Right.
Ones. I'm like, oh, okay.
So,
but they also have a production line, already in.
So there's kind of two questions that came up. One, there was some speculation about defrocking the gods of the Forgotten Realms as the kind of posers that they are. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know what they'll do with that. That's a good question. I don't think we will have time to deal with that piece of it. Confronting Torm or whomever. Maybe. we've got a lot to pack into next session, right? In terms of the big confrontation with Xanathar, getting enough people getting regenerated, fixed, healed, whatever. What Ava and then the rest of the party decides to do about Kasharla. There's a lot, there's a lot going on there already to fit into 3 hours. And I don't know that, you get back to Faerun and then all of a sudden Torm shows up and goes, well, this is uncomfortable, but I'm hoping that you'll be willing to keep our little secret under your hat.
Right, yeah.
Like, I don't know, I don't know that we'll get that far. Maybe.
Yeah.
It's just something that came up that was an interesting concept to me. And I think there's more to explore, but I don't think we have the sessions to explore it. And maybe not even like the scope of the campaign right now to explore it. Just to kind of like lift the cover on next season a little bit, I think we'll probably be rolling up new characters. So unless we roll up new characters that specifically are tuned to address, the crimes of the deities or whatever you want to call it, or their true origins or confront their nature, I don't know.
Right.
It's interesting, I don't think it came out explicitly last night, but it's been hinted at. Asmodeus is the one that murdered, Masharla, right? I don't know that the connection has been explicitly drawn, but I'm willing to drop a spoiler here. And that is in the backstory, and I think the players sort of understand that. But some of it is, I think the gods, not all the gods maybe were in on the plot, right? Is what it comes down to. I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think Torm knowingly took part in this act. But, hey, somebody didn't make it off the ship? Okay. Oh, well, that's too bad. Here we are.
Right.
So I think there's, I think there's a lot of different complexities to that situation. Yeah, so yeah, I guess it is a big spoiler, but remember there was the flashback scene where Ava saw that that Basharla was arguing with a guy. It was a man, and he had this long braided hair, right? Like he had 2 braids that went down either side of his head. Well, that was me sort of hinting at these 2 braids sort of represent horns, right? But in the list that Thawne has, he's already brought up Asmodeus is on this list. What's Asmodeus' first name? We saw that play out, right? Well, that's the connection there, is that Asmodeus, the duplicitous traitor, wanted to get off the ship, and Basharla was bringing up all of this stuff of, we can't leave these people behind. What about these people behind? And this is, an immoral act. And he's like, I'm not letting this woman stand in my way of us getting off the ship. And so that's how he, sabotaged her gear and had her murdered. In the second scene that we saw with that Grayson, the memory that Grayson witnessed last session, not last session, but last week, he saw this play out where, Asmodeus and a couple other compatriots, Asmodeus didn't do it himself, but this man that she was arguing with, closes the door in the life pod, and she puts her helmet on and she's running down the corridor, and her suit floods and she drowns and dies, right? There's a little bit more to it than that, but that's the, yeah, that's right, Asmodeus is being framed. So that's a little backstory that's going on. I don't think we're going to be able to really get that to come out in play, but that's why we have this show, right? So that's one of the things that's kind of filtering around in the back of my mind is it's not just the good gods that were created out of this cataclysmic accident. Right. It's also all of the evil gods, so whatnot. So. Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's an interesting idea that Torm did it, and maybe he's trying to redeem himself. Maybe Torm knew. Maybe Torm was complicit somehow, right? I don't know. But it's there's room to explore there. Mm-hmm. I don't think we have the time to explore there.
Right.
So, Yes, did the other gods know? Will they find out? Who knows? Who knows? Yes, that's right. Luigi is here. He was taking a nap, but somehow he woke up and remembered that we stopped at McDonald's. So it's fry time. The other question, I believe Blind Seer raised the question of how do you build to how do you bring a long-term campaign to an exciting conclusion? So that is a terrific question. I think we're going to kind of see this in play, next week, right? So this is going to be session 14 or something like that of this particular.
Yesterday was session 14.
Okay, so 15 sessions, basically 15 weeks. We've been playing this 4 months. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the average length of an Adventurers League adventure, I think. In my experience, like 4 to 6 months is what you play. I think it is more of an adventure arc than maybe a campaign arc, but it still feels like it's got the weight of being a campaign in many ways. Mm-hmm. So, Griffin, I'm not sure what kind of seeds I will leave with the players for next season. I've got some ideas, but whether they're things that part of it is I haven't decided what we're going to play. I don't know what levels, and I don't know what adventure, right? And some of that depends upon what the players want to play, right? I want some input from them, right? But, so to answer your question, Blind Seer, in terms of how do you build to an epic campaign finale, I feel like I've addressed this before, but let's kind of review. And a big part of it is, like I said earlier in the show, it's taking all of the knobs and dials that you can and trying to turn all of the fun dials up to 10 or 11, right? So breaking the rules, I think, is really an essential part of running an epic campaign finale, right? Mm-hmm. So like overcharging Ava with a bunch of radiant energy so that she can have, shoot bolts of God's fire from her hands and transform into a 30-foot tall water elemental. Like, that sounds great, right? It's not within the purview of a 6th level character to pull that off. That's not balanced, quote unquote. Well, here's the thing. Campaign finale is not your regular game. It's not what D&D is designed for. D&D is designed for you pick up your character sheet, you sit down, you play for 4 hours, you mark up a bunch of XP, you collect some gold, you get a magic item or whatever, or buy some equipment, and then next session, you sit down with that same character sheet and you play, and so it's designed so that there's kind of a gradual, steady increase of power, but it forms kind of a nice arc over the course of 14 sessions or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. However many it is for you to level up, right? Even if it takes you 12 sessions to do 3 levels or whatever it is, it's still designed so that it goes just like this, right? Your campaign finale is not one session in the midst of an arc of 14 sessions. Your campaign finale is a one-shot, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what you have to remember, is that this group of PCs, and maybe this group of players, is not getting together again. They're not part of, there's no like part 2 where we go like this. There's a definitive break. Everybody comes into this final thing with a certain amount of expectations and doesn't ever expect to have anything come out the other end. When I sit down at a game of Adventurers League, I expect that my character will survive the end of that episode, right? I expect that we'll go on this adventure, I will get some XP, I will get some treasure, I will argue with somebody about how my bad roll doesn't mean that I shouldn't get the magic item, mm-hmm. or whatever it is, and then I will take my character and go to another table and play in another game. That's what I expect. So that means like how many health potions I have really like matters to me. I care about how many health potions I have. That means, if I have a Staff of the Magi, I am very diligently writing down how many charges I have and how much it resets every dawn, right? In a one-shot, you don't have any future expectations. You're trying to land your character in whatever way, shape, or form you are trying to land your character. So if I have a Staff of the Magi and I know it's the campaign finale, unless I'm trying to make my character into the wise old sage who lives in the tower, and a long time ago I fought Stalorix, the white dragon who lived in the mountain at the top of the world, right? Unless I want him to be that guy sometime in the future, then I better go out on a big note, right? I'm more likely to go, I've got a Staff of the Magi. I don't want to be the doddering old sage with the long beard in the tower. Who cares? I want to be the guy who broke his Staff of the Magi over the skull of Stalorix, the ice dragon at the top of the world, and blew the dragon to bits. Right? So yeah, like Wraith 42 says, give your campaign finale its own set of rules. Dial up how fantastic the location is. Give your players superhero type abilities, regardless of what level they are, or make their abilities do some rule breaking things. Right? Another example. I am playing in. This sounds insane when I say it out loud. I'm playing in a game where we are all 24th level. Yeah. You would think that you would just be an superhuman engine of destruction. I'm playing a 24th level sorcerer. Not true. I took like Fireball and whatnot. The very first session or the second session, the DM is like, okay, well, we're drafting you to go into the 7 hells or the 9 hells or whatever it is and go and confront Asmodeus. And I'm like, looking at my spell list, and it's like Fiery Bolt, Fireball, Flame Strike, whatever, it's all these fire-based spells. And I'm like, can these guys even be affected by this? And he's like, no, they're devils. They're totally immune to fire. And I'm like, my character's completely nerfed. What he did was he invented a spell called Hellfire, which is 1 level higher. It's a 4th level spell. Does the same thing as Fireball, but the fire can't be resisted by immunity. I don't think it can be resisted by anything. You can just make the saving throw. It's that type of stuff, like tweaking your PC's abilities that like enables them to kind of like make that last session feel extra special, right? Likewise, I think it's okay to have your monsters which somewhat break the rules. The dragon swings its tail and destroys a building. Well, shouldn't it actually? No, it swings its tail, it destroys that whole section of the wall. Okay. That sort of stuff, right? So I think you're allowed to amp up, your villains in some capacity. Likewise, amp up your locations so that they involve something strange and fantastic. Kind of like what we did here, right? I don't know how exactly I'm going to amp up the locations next week. They have kind of the potential to fight in the bioengineering garden. I suppose they could like wall up, like bunker down in the tank, but I don't feel like that's going to be a successful strategy for them. No. If you want to fight a beholder and crime lord and all of his various minions, I don't think being at the bottom of 120 feet of water is a good idea. Maybe for them it's okay, right? But they could fight it. They could fight in the bioengineering place. They could fight on one of the engineering decks. Maybe. I think there's the possibility for them to fight either. You gotta lay down, buddy. Oh,
no.
Big flaps. Lay down. Hey. I think there's a big possibility for them to fight either in space or on the outside of the ship, right? That sounds interesting, right? But the point being, like, find an epic and fantastic place for them to fight. And I don't know, don't worry, I guess, and the other thing that I will say is, don't worry about the treasure as much. Worry about the story beat payoffs, right? there's two parts to this. So pay off the loose ends that the players care about. Give them that moment where, you know, they can say goodbye to their dad or whatever. That's one thing. The other thing is you have an opportunity to do a callback to, do you remember when this person, you know, you left this person by the side of the road? They're here now.
Right.
Potentially as an ally. Remember, all of this amping up stuff also counts like resources in terms of like, who's a friend that they made who really owes them? I brought you this sword. You saved my life from those bandits, and it took me 3 months to travel back to the keep where I had buried it, but you know, right? I mean, Xanathar fighting the Froghemoth would be great. I think the Froghemoth has to make an appearance regardless, right? But you can do a callback to those characters who came before, who either got abused by the party or got rescued by the party, and have them kind of tie in and make an appearance. So I think we had that I thought that was very successful last night, where it was literally session 3 that I introduced these weird purple gnome guys.
Right.
And they had this whole thing, and they worshipped Grayson, and they couldn't pronounce Thon's name and whatnot. I went back and watched that section of the game, because I was like, how much can I pull forward into this thing?
Yeah.
And I thought that was an extremely fun. I mean, I don't want to like toot my own horn too much and say, oh, well, look at how deft that was. But it created just another band of connection between what we had set up in the campaign. We spent 5 sessions getting there, and there were, you know, it's like, how does any of this stuff make sense or whatever, right? Like, why is all of this travel important? And it turns out, like, now it is. It'd be really great if in the finale next week, that cloud giant showed up and was like, you stole from me! I want my boots and my knife and my plates!
But then who's hanging around in an airship above them right now, just waiting for them to come back? Yeah, I think I called the Froghemoth potentially coming back on one side or another on Tuesday.
I will say, I have the Froghemoth miniature from Reaper Minis, and it is enormous and terrifying. It's not painted.
That's great.
We
have some similar. We could use the Iron Tusk, actually. We have lots of little.
Yeah, just tentacles.
Just tentacles.
Blind Seer, thank you so
Blind
much.
Seer. Thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
Estelle, to answer you, no, we don't have any of the Axe and Shield clear risers here that I know of.
No, yeah, we don't have anything that's flying stuff.
Yeah. No. Mm-mm.
I sometimes that stuff gets expensive, and then it also kind of gets in the way of the cameras, and somebody's gonna knock it over. And there's a lot of fine juggling. I know in my home campaign, it gets tricky because somebody bumps the table and all the stuff goes like this.
I often, just use like Chessex, like.
Hey, Griffin, you're welcome to come over to my house anytime and just quick do an ink wash in purple, then green, and then dry brush purple, and give it a good quick gloss protective spray.
Yeah.
Come on over. I will be happy to supply the miniature. It has to be glued together first. Maybe I will do that. I've got to do my taxes this weekend is the thing. But yeah.
Probably not enough time.
I need a more solid idea of what the Froghemoth is going to do in the thing. Although, I mean, they did unlock an upgraded menu of life forms.
Yeah.
Right? So what if
they were able to create Froghemoth?
What if Grayson could transfer himself into, or anyone really, could transfer themselves into a Froghemoth and be the Froghemoth? Yeah. I love Reaper Minis, but it's always a little embarrassing to put those stark white plastic models on the table, right? I wish I spent more time painting.
We have a couple of big beasties. We might be able to pull something out.
God, but I specifically bought that one because it was so great.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we'll think about it.
I don't think there's enough time for Iron Tusk to.
No, there's not. Iron Tusk has a child.
Yes.
I have a dog. He requires near constant attention, but there we go.
Whatever happened to the
Whatever
3D
happened to the 3D printer? We have not had it. I'm very tempted to get it set up in here, but we don't have the space for that.
You got a 3D printer, right?
I do not.
Oh,
I thought about it. I've seriously considered it.
Yeah. No.
I've seriously considered it, but I also enjoy being married. And that would be a big purchase that I don't think I can just unilaterally pull the trigger on.
The problem with 3D printers, especially for things that are complicated, is that you have to let them run for a long time, especially if you're using different color, what do they call it, the wire or whatever, the filament. And that means it's probably running during when we have a show and stuff, so we can't really have.
Yeah, that's true. It's got to run for overnight. Wouldn't be bad, but yeah.
Yeah, the resins.
Griffin, I'm glad that you were inspired. A thin layer of gouache and then gloss spray. You might talk me into this.
What if you just got a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles figure and use that as the Froggy Mod?
The problem is it's Thursday, and most of the stuff that I could get delivered by Wednesday it's probably too late to order.
What if you use that Parallax figure and you just
Yes, yes.
Ugh,
Yeah.
it's gross. Anyway,
All right, very good. No, the 3D printer would definitely go in my office. My office is already crammed with other role-playing game stuff. So, thank you, Modern Chow, for being the voice of reason here. Yeah.
I already did my taxes.
I think if we had a little more room in the office, I could probably find a way to swing a 3D printer. But if they came down another $200 in price, that would be easier. Right now, I think you have to spend about $700. $500, it's a big investment, but I've got $500 worth of Dwarven Forge, pieces sitting at home too, and those are not as flexible as print-on-demand minis.
What if you strapped it to Luigi's back? Then it's mobile.
No. Hey, I do want to mention one other thing before we move on to the show today. We'll kind of wrap up the show today. But I did write an adventure for Baldman Games for their CCC line. If you go on DM's Guild and you look up A Spirited Investigation, it just came out today. You might want to put our affiliate ID on there. But yes, I did an adventure for Baldman Games. They ran it at Gen Con, and they have run it at, I think it was at Winter Fantasy. It is now finally, I think Baldman is one word. A Spirited Investigation is what mine is called, because you're going to get 1 million hits on that, unless you look at most recent. Yeah. The Spirited Investigation. So, it's part of a trilogy, but I think you could adapt this to be a one-shot adventure fairly easily. It should not be a big deal to do that. I honestly wrote it without having a huge idea of what the preceding parts of the trilogy were going to look like. I just sort of knew I knew the very basics of the inputs and the outputs, and I knew that I was responsible for the third part of it, right? So this takes place at essentially sort of like a weird underground crime lord's mansion. And they are having a masquerade ball, and they have all kinds of events around this ball. Like basically, there are these various figures in the underworld who show up and compete for the ability to go into a ritual contest where you can compel your opponent in the ring, if you defeat them, to, I think, either answer 3 questions or they have to obey a one promise. I don't remember exactly. I literally wrote it like almost a year ago, so I don't recall exactly what what the ritual involves. But it's this kind of like high stakes ritual, and your players are sent to investigate somebody who's been arrested for a crime, but you need to get the evidence that there's evidence that this person has committed the crime. You need to try and compel a confession from them. And so part of the premise here is that you compete in the competition, and you go into the ritual, and you use the confines of the ritual to compel the truth from somebody and get him to confess, right? So that's part of it. But there are a ton of like little role-playing events. Hi, buddy. How are you? Is everything okay? It's my dog, everyone. It's Luigi.
Say hello.
Hi.
My dog you can't see because he's far too low.
Lay down.
He's also sleeping and snoring right now. That's just cool.
So that's it. It's, I don't know, what, $4, $5, something like that. It is designed to be kind of its own thingy. Even though it is part of a trilogy, it really could be standalone and wouldn't take much work to run it on its own. And if you want to see kind of like what it's really kind of a sandbox adventure, right? It gives you the ability to like meet a bunch of different people, potentially, compete in a bunch of different events that are each built around kind of a different skill class or whatever, maybe cheat in different events, and sort of unravel a little bit of a mystery all at the same time. And it sort of scales. So if you decide, okay, we did 3 events and we're done, guess what? It's midnight, it's time for the ritual. If your players are really having fun, it's like, oh, well, it's 11:40, you got time for 1, maybe 2 more.
Right.
Okay. You can kind of control that time frame. So that's the adventure. It's really one of the few things that I have had formally published. I did some stuff for Monty Cook and whatnot back when he was running Malhavoc Press. That was published, but that's my only 5e thing that's currently out there. So I don't know, try it. Somebody put a 5-star review on. It just went up this morning, so thank you. I have not looked, but very good. So it's an opportunity for you to see some of my original material. I was given the premise and given kind of some of the parameters around it. A fun setup to the adventure is you have to impersonate somebody who's been invited, right? Because only people who are invited, who have sort of this magic envelope or key or whatever it is, are allowed into the party. And so there's an ambush at the beginning where you get to knock off basically like this foppish underworld dandy who has sort of like lucked his way into. His dad was invited, and his dad died kind of abruptly, and so the invitation was passed down to the kid, and nobody likes the kids, so nobody's going to complain. But you get to set up an ambush against the stagecoach and whatnot. It's a good time. So there's some fun little set pieces in there that I think you'll enjoy tinkering with.
Cool.
I don't know. That's it. So tonight is nothing. It's okay. Do what you want. Do your taxes tonight. I've got a voiceover class. Tomorrow is a special. Is it a one-off or is it a small arc?
Well, it's technically the second of what was supposed to just be a one-off. But
yeah, it's a callback inspired by a previous one-off that you've run in Savage Worlds.
Yes.
And it's called Prickly
Tall Stag and the Danger Seekers, pairs.
What's your log line? Sell me on this thing. I don't know anything about it.
Adventuring by committee.
All right. Very good.
Yeah, it's your standard adventuring party, and they all have unique deficiencies that yes, here's Tolsteg. I have in my own German character that I play. So
all right. Well, does Simeth Pirnikov show up and translate you?
He might if he needs to, but I don't think he will have to. I don't use German. I'm not German. That's the accent. It's like
you're just
being from the south of the United States. They still speak English, but they have a different accent.
All right, fair enough. Very good.
Anyway,
Who's in the show? Who's in the show tomorrow night?
It's the Wild Cards cast. So it's Jordan Pridgeon, Megan Caves, Gaurav Gulati, and myself, and Jordan Caves Kellerman as the GM. And we are using Savage Worlds as the system with the fantasy rule set. So they have a specific fantasy sourcebook companion, so you can run fantasy type stuff. So this was last year. It was all we did it. It was the final episode of that season, basically, and just sort of a test to see how a D&D style kind of campaign could be run with Savage Worlds rules, and we had a lot of fun with it. So going back. When does Wildcards itself come back? May 11th, I believe.
Very good.
Where everything goes pear-shaped. Yes.
Yes.
It's true.
So Saturday, I don't know, enjoy your YouTubes. Go back and watch watch anything that you missed. Sunday, is it Tempting Fate? Are we back with more Tempting Fate?
Toy Story 2.
So,
second part.
So Amy and who else is in that game?
Not that Amy, but another Amy.
Oh, there's a rotating cast for Toy Story 2?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So Sam DeLev, we are following Sam DeLev's Beanie Baby character as they search for a family and hugs. And
are you sure this isn't an Amy Vorpal joint? Because it sounds a lot like an Amy Vorpal joint.
But,
family.
But Amy Dallin, Markia McCarty, who people may remember from our Never Tell Me the Odds series, and Dylan DeVal, I believe, from Vast.
Okay.
I think I got his name right. Anyway, yeah. So three new people. Gina and Max are out next week. So we got 3 other people in here, and then Jamrick Bud. So Toy Story 2, and then there's going to be Toy Story 3.
Now, what's coming in? Mysterium just wrapped. Megan just wrapped her Mysterium game on Monday night. What comes in the new Monday night? So
we start our new series Legacy with Stephen Pope. So that's the new Monday night game. That's a City of Mist game. We did the preview for our subathon, and you saw a couple of the characters. Alyssa Appleton and Kelly Nugent brought their characters to that, and then Sydney from Uncanny Valley and Jordan Pridgeon will be joining the cast, and that's where that's going to be.
All right. So. And then the 2 of us will be back here on Tuesday to plan the big season finale, the final episode of the season, the capper on Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. So, you know,
the way it was meant to be.
All of this stuff that I mentioned about turn all of your knobs and dials up to 11 and let the superhero powers. Got to plan that TPK, as Black Dragon AK points out.
You don't need to plan a TPK.
No, I think I can put enough pieces in play to make sure that there's a TPK. I mean, who says it's just one beholder grafted onto a T-Rex? They graft a beholder onto the head of the T-Rex.
Right.
And then those little arms are useless, right?
Yeah.
Well, you might as well attach blood vessels to those things and put 2 more beholders on.
Sure.
It's like beholder boxing gloves. Only instead of punching, he just shoots rays of disintegration at you. Yes! Yes. So it's all just beholders. That's right. So tune in Tuesday where I will discuss every different kind of beholder that I'll be including in the finale. And and Asmodeus shows up. You guys have planned it. Good job. You've already planned it. My work is done here. Thank you so much. Thank you to Farquaad and the rest of our regulars who mod the channel and help keep the channel safe, friendly, clean, and accessible. Thank you to everybody who donated bits. Blind Seer, who kicked in some cash today. Really appreciate that. Big thanks to DJ Regular, the clip master extraordinaire. Thanks to all of our regulars who show up and share your ideas and engage in the conversation. That's what makes these little kind of recap chat back shows fun and enjoyable for me. Is not only is it a chance for me to espouse my deep and abiding experience with Dungeons and Dragons, but also it stimulates inspiration for me. So, yes.
Little known fact, you only get a show like this once you become a level 3 GM.
You have to be a level 3 GM. Wait a minute. So if I do really badly at the finale and I get demoted, DisOrganized plays over, everybody. Very good, very good. All right. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us. Spread the word if you can when the show comes on, whenever the show comes on. Back our Patreon. It's the middle of the month, but why not? Why not? Why not? Why not? And until next time, let's dungeon! Okay, here's what I'm thinking. It's a beholder grafted onto Dolly Parton's body. Too much?